Hello, everybody, and welcome to Press Forward to Diffuse, your weekly spot for Valorant esports news and discussion. We've got a lot to talk about this week. I'm Darth Mike. There's Ryan. We finally got him back. Almost feels like he's a guest at this point. I like your hat, Ryan. And our
Thank
very
you.
special guest today is Mr. Twiggy, who's hopping on in to give us a hand. Sam couldn't make this episode, and we're going to hear from one of the newest casters on the VCT EU broadcast. How you doing today, Twiggy?
I'm doing great. Thank you very much. I shaved, so this is a new look for me. I haven't shaved in like a year, so we're going clean today. I look like a high schooler.
I like it. Keep the vibes up here. I've got the baby face, and meanwhile, we've got again Ryan over here with the cap that looks like he's just cracked open a paper on a Sunday at the ripe old age of 40. Tell me about this cap, Ryan. I'm fascinated.
My granddad's. Oh, well, it was my granddad. It's mine now. So, yeah, I figured new glasses and all that kind of stuff. Just figured I'd give it a spin because I was like, oh, that might be quite good luck. I haven't worn this hat in ages, so I figured I'd give it a try. Because the
I
problem
do
with
like it.
snapbacks on broadcast is like your face is kind of like always sort of shrouded in darkness. So I never get to wear them. So I wanted to try something a bit different.
I like it as much as I will give you grief for it because it's a very it's a certain type of hat. I do genuinely like it. I want to clarify.
It's a very farmer's hat, but I'm from Yorkshire, so I can get away with it. I get a pass.
Well, we've got a lot of news to get into, so we are going to hop into it. And the first thing that's been apparently a trend sweeping the world is medical leave of absences. Everyone is going on leave. We'll start in Europe with it. Eccles was just announced being signed to NIP, which means that Existence's leave from the team is now official. He's not quite taking a full leave from the team. He's actually going to help out with the assistant coaching role here, hopping in to help Emil out in that regard. So it's kind of an interesting move, right? Because you still get some of the value out of having Existence's brain in your roster, but he gets to rest his wrist. So what do we make of this one, Twiggy?
Well, I think I've been wanting to see Eccles play at that level for a while now. Obviously, he was back in, I think Stage 1 was the big time we saw him, and he's been kind of working his way back up there, and it's exciting to see him play at that level again. And I think NIP kind of, I think, need that extra analytical input. From what I saw during VCT, they looked a little lost against aggressive play, so I think it'll be a good move for them.
I am curious to hear from you as well about this, Ryan. I know you've been a fan of Eccles even really since he was removed from Liquid. Brain fright there.
Yeah.
Talk to me about it.
Yeah, because he played with them for a bit, and then he was dropped. It seemed like it was one of those things that, like, he put out a looking for team tweet a couple of days before Stage 2 started up again. Because I think maybe Kukos assumed, I'm feeling a bit better, I can do better, I can go. And then just as Stage 3 started, they brought in Vicious. And it was basically Existence would play the first map of a best of one, and then Vicious would play the rest of it. And it was a shame because NIP always started off really well in the tournaments. They did look like a team that could have probably qualified. But when you change up the team from taking a Kukos out of the roster and then basically, what to say, like, you lose that IGL and you bring in a great player like Vicious, but it's not the same. At least Eccles can at least have some consistency, and it's important because NIP have points on the board for Europe. But if any new team like G2 come in and get more points than 20, it knocks NIP well out of the equation for qualifying for last chance qualifiers. So it's a last-ditch attempt for them, but I think it's a good move.
Now, I do also want to clarify, or try and clarify, because I'm still curious about this. The Existence of Kukos, the two names he was messing with, in this latest announcement from NIP, they referred to him as Existence, not just, linking to his Twitter or whatnot, but actually in text, he's back to being Existence. Do we know if he's abandoned the Kukos name already? Do we think that was a failed branding experiment there?
I don't think so. I think he's just known as both, and I don't think he personally minds what people call him, because obviously most people know him as Existence, but I think it's just on broadcast called Makukos because that's the name that's put in front. So calling him Existence is a bit confusing for people that don't know him, but I think most people have gotten away with it so far.
Exist Kukos. All right, moving on. More leave of absences to talk about. Heading on over to Korea. Exist is taking a leave of absence from Vision Strikers. He will be stepping back from that roster. Now, the thing with the Vision Strikers is they had a 6-player roster and even I think almost a 7-player roster at one point, or maybe the most recent point. So they're not going to need to sign anybody. They're not going to bring anyone in. They've got the players already on roster. But obviously losing Zest here or just stepping back. This seems to be. And I'm kind of wondering whether timing-wise, the fact that we're seeing so many players hit a leave of absence, we're like a year and a quarter on from Valorant being a thing, right? So we've got some physical injuries coming in. We've maybe got some burnout coming in. We have players like, we'll talk about Pattyfan in a minute, who's been injured for a while and has been playing through it. It almost feels like we're just hitting the breaking point of the grind for Valorant almost. Do you think that's accurate, Twiggy?
Yeah, I think getting like sick or injured at any capacity is quite worrying at this point, especially with COVID and stuff, and knowing that you're going to be having to travel later on with international competition potentially. And I think for a team like Vision Strikers, that's quite important. I think they do have like the squad depth that it doesn't really matter. They can swap out players at that point and rest up Zest for the international competition. I think it's important to do that. And if you do have the squad depth, that's something you should be doing, is giving your players that option to be able to like back up for a second. And you don't want to play when you're sick or injured or anything like that.
Especially with them having just brought in Lakia back to the roster, they've got some good handlines. They've got some new fresh talent with that as well. Do we think that's going to buoy them through this? Do you think they're going to be missing Zest here, Ryan?
I don't know really. I think because Zest is Zest, like he's moving over from Austria to sort of.
He's taking a medical leave of absence.
Left lane, Autobahn, fucking Autobahn all the time. He's always mentioning it. It's insane. But yeah, like I think that he's a relatively older player, much like a lot of that Vision Strikers roster is. So much like having Glow still on the roster in more of a coaching capacity, it could still be handy. I think it's very similar to Existence, where you would prefer them to play because they are a very good player in the server. Not so, like, you know what I mean, but like moving into a similar position like Glow and stuff. So Zest being able to take a step back is good for the young talent that is clearly there for Korea, but we don't have those veteran players in that region because there was no like tactical shooter scene that was at least that popular to have the likes of Hiko and Existence over in Korea, if that makes sense. That was Glow for the most part, and he's already moved in, but there isn't many players other than him in there. So yeah, I think Zest moving back and being able to be more in a managerial position is only a good thing for him because he gets rest, but also gets a bit of time to teach the young kids how to play it.
Well, my internet just cut for a little while, so I missed that entire point, but I'm sure it was a good one, and I'm back just in time. We'll head on over. We'll talk about Pattyfan. I already sort of brought him up a little bit, but Pattyfan is also taking a leave from X10. This was a situation where he's had a wrist injury. He said he's been playing with it for 7 months, which is insane, but didn't want to give up the opportunity and is now going to take the time off. Now, I will say, especially with wrist injuries, it's super concerning that he continued to play on it because the way to heal most wrists, again, not a medical professional here, but the way, in my experience, to deal with most wrist injuries, especially those that are sustained due to gaming, is to just stop for a while. So playing on it for 7 months is nuts, but hopefully he'll be able to come back and not have some sort of permanent nerve, muscle, repetitive injury kind of damage, because those can really mess you up. I mean, we've seen them literally cut CS careers short in that game. We haven't really seen it yet in Valorant, but like, oh, folks, if you're watching, you're a young player, stretch before playing. If you're noticing pain in your wrist, don't keep playing. Take a break. Maybe go consult a professional, get it sorted out. Wrist injuries really will mess you up way more than you think they would. Take them seriously. Take all wrist pain seriously.
It's the cruciate ligament of esports. Or just, yeah,
the one thing that matters.
Yeah, if you mess with that, it's very difficult to come back from it. And it sucks from a young player. Like Pattypan was the Southeast Asian region. He was the poster child of that at Masters 2. And you would want to see him there, right? You'd want to see both Pattypan and Boaster reunite and play against each other yet again. And if not that, see Pattypan move over to like an NA team to sort of pick up that kind of talent. So seeing him bow out in what's going to be a pretty impactful stage is a rough one, but saying that, X10, they won Masters 1. They qualified better than anybody else in Masters 2. They're pretty much surefire going to be making their way to champions at the end of the year because 2 teams, for some weird reason, go from Southeast Asia to champions based off points. So even if we do see, I don't know, Brain Esports overtake them, they're still likely to be top 2 because they've got so much more points than anybody else. So Patipan, we should still be seeing him later on. But yeah, it's seeing him at Worlds that I hope to see because he's definitely surely a booking for that.
Hopefully he can be rested up in time for that. I mean, do you have any views on X10 here, Twiggy?
Well, I mean, X10 are just, I mean, they're a great team. They've done well all the time. And Patipan, yeah, he was kind of the poster child of that, and especially of Southeast Asia in general, into Masters and stuff like that. But I think it's just the thing with these is that we've seen it a tiny bit in CSGO, but not really in any other esports, is that there isn't really any kind of that, physical kind of like therapy stuff that comes over from traditional sports like we see in that. And it is just as important, I think. There was talks like at the start of Overwatch about how they were going to try and keep players fit with the whole, because they have such a tight run ship that they were going to try and like do physical exams on players. And I think it is an important thing that you have to think about. And if you're going to exacerbate a wrist injury for 7 months, that's a risk that you can't really take at this level. I guess that if you're competing in an international event every like 3 months, then it is difficult to take a break and say, I'm going to take a step back. But probably not a good idea to have, waited this long for it.
Definitely suboptimal. I will say, if we're looking to extend player longevity, maybe Overwatch isn't the sport to look at. A few early retirements there. By the dozen. But moving on to our next topic here. This one is a little bit sad to see, maybe a little bit bittersweet. We knew that Caboose was off of the starting roster at this point, but Caboose is actually going to be stepping back, it seems, from esports in general, and checking out different pursuits. Caboose off of that NV roster. Obviously, Marv has come in to replace him. But Caboose was a player he was a founding member of that NV team. He's been a really dynamic player. He's a super talented dude who a lot of people have pointed at different points. But it seems like maybe he's ready for a change of pace. And the crazy thing for me was I looked it up to see how old he is. He's 21. He's been competing for so long in CS and then in Valorant. This guy's been in the scene for years. He's only 21. Like, yeah, go try something else, man. You got a long time ahead of you to try whatever the hell you want. That just blew me away. That absolutely blew me away.
Yeah, what's weird as well, I was just going to say, like, I think he did a series with Alienware where he was doing, like, analytical pieces. Like explaining how to play a map and how to play certain agents. So he could be a coach if he wanted to. He could even be on like a desk or as talent for the NA scene going forward, because clearly he's very good at articulating that information. The frustrating thing is Envy, when they move around who's playing the Omen, who's playing the Duelist with him, Victor and Mummy. It annoys me. It annoys me when BDS do it as well over in Europe, where they just change fundamental roles on a team, because you're not going to get consistent results when you have Hoppy going, I'm playing the Duelist, I'm going to be the entry to, I'm playing the Sentinel, I'm going to be more supportive, and I'm going to be on the Omen, and I'm going to be more supportive. It's just a recipe for disaster. So I feel that he is a very talented player that kind of got screwed over with the fact of, all right, this map you're playing the Omen, this map you're playing the Phoenix or whatever. It seemed that NV team, that initial one, had so much potential, but the fact that it wasn't really realized wasn't down to him at all. So if we see Envy do well now in his future stage, it's not because Caboose was a bad player,
Twiggy, you got any views on what's going on with that Envy team?
Yeah, I mean, not specifically just Envy. I think the thing is with again, one of those things that doesn't really carry over from traditional sports is that you don't have any security in esports. There is a very limited range of things that you can be picked up for. There are only a certain amount of tier 1 teams, whereas in stuff like sports, there are a wide range of teams that you could go for with wide ranges of pools of like pay and stuff like that. And it's very difficult when you feel like maybe you haven't competed greatly for a long time, and then suddenly you're feeling that pressure from your management. If you don't start performing better, you're going to be dropped from the team, and there's not really any way you can go. So you just feel like you might want to try and do other things, and that's kind of what's going on here. And I think, yeah, he's young at the very least. It's a good time to pursue different like avenues. But it is sad to see.
I do think that if he wanted to continue competing in Valorant, there are a lot of rosters where he would make them better in North America. So I think that finding a salary for Caboose is viable. I think that this is, my guess is that this is a willful choice to explore another passion. I think he's been getting big into poker, so maybe he's about to pull a Jaguar and go run some poker tables for a while, go turn into a poker pro. Whatever it is, I've always appreciated Caboose as a person. He's a good dude. I've seen him at lands over the years and in a lot of different rosters over the years across 2 esports now. And I hope him a lot of success. I really do wish that whatever he does, whatever pursuit he finds, he enjoys it. Because again, 21 is so young. You like, figure out what you want to do. It doesn't have to be what you've been doing. I vacillated between so many different things when I was around that age. Like, explore stuff. I get it. It is sometimes crazy when we think about like how young people get into esports and how young they sort of get locked into this mentality of like, this is what I'm going to do. Like, well, what you want to do, what you're passionate about at 18 might have nothing to do with what you care about at 20, right? Like, you change so much in that time in your life.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I was like 2 years ago, I wanted to be a musician, and now I'm 21 and I'm suddenly in esports. So
I could never tell that from your background.
Yeah, the music thing.
No, oh god, yeah, no. You would never know, honestly. Football player, for sure.
Definitely, yeah. Nah, why you can't hold a tone. Heading on to our next topic here. Another player leaving, this one not retiring, but leaving this roster. Seb has been removed from Anbox, founding member of the Anbox Valorant squad. They're a team that's made a lot of swaps around. Seb is another guy who's just a very, very high character dude. Someone who I've known for a while now, who's just a really good dude, very level-headed teammate from everything that I've ever heard from people who've competed with him. Very consistent, very reliable. Not necessarily your big fragger, not necessarily your big numbers contributor for that roster. And it seems like Anbox are moving in a different direction. We've got a rumor that we'll talk about a little later on, but Seb off of Anbox, how do you feel about that, Ryan?
The problem is where he's going and what he's doing, because apparently he's working as an analyst now for 100 Thieves.
Wait, is
that
really?
like I think so. I remember somebody or other was talking about it on their stream. It's such a bizarre one. I saw it on Reddit and it honestly made me so confused I just ignored it. It was one of those things that's like, I don't have time to work out what the hell is going on with this player. But yeah, the rumor we'll talk about in a second. But the problem, I suppose, is that we're kind of seeing Anbox become that NRG team. And as far as I know, Anbox have 20 points on the board, I think, which is they're in a spot, I think, where they could qualify for like last chance qualifiers, but they're joint on points with like LG or whoever. So there is time, and you don't want to change up the roster too much because you lose those points. I know it's just 20, but it's still better than 0, like a lot like TSM's on, for example. You know, like it gives them a bit of an edge. So Anbox are changing up a lot dramatically right now, and I just don't want to see what happens to NRG where they just have this revolving door of talent coming through, because Anbox once used to look like a really good team, and now with losing Seb, I hope that they can keep that form.
To clarify, because I do see the mentions coming from chat, is Seb also doing analyst work for 100 Thieves, or was that Boy that you're confusing him for? Because I know Boy did go over to do analyst work at 100 Thieves. I didn't see anything about Seb yet.
Yeah, so that's... I think they would lose their points then, because they got their points. Actually, maybe not, because they got their points in stage 2. The question is, did they have poach at that point? Which I don't think they did.
I don't think so.
So I think they just get away with it at that point.
But yeah, to clarify, I don't think Seb is doing analyst for 100 Thieves. I think that's Boy. Just wanted to get that out there. Different Anbox member. Ryan, can you hear me?
I can. I'm listening. Okay. Sorry. I'm looking.
Ryan's checking points. Ryan's checking points. Anyways, we'll move on about that one. But, I mean, Seb, Anbox, swapping a lot of players. I'm kind of the opinion that you're now running into an issue with not a lot of stability, right? The 3 players who are on the roster. Ye's been competing for a while. Vice has been competing for a while. Mata's really young. JC Stani coming in. We're going to talk about it in a little bit, but there's rumors that Thwyfo's the next player that they're seeking to bring on in. Seb is a very level-headed dude, and I think that he contributes a lot to a roster, I suspect, beyond his play in the server. So I am kind of curious to see how that's going to do. I know they've got Warden as their coach, so he's, again, a very experienced guy, the long-time veteran.
I found it. So the one thing I wanted to check is, does this move devoid Ambux of their points? And the answer is no, because their squad was Ye, Mada, and Vice, who are still with the team.
Yeah.
And then Boy and Seb leaving. If like Vice left or whatever, then yeah, they'd lose their points. But it's not like Heretics that lost quite a lot because of their big roster changes. So it wasn't that big of a deal. But yeah, losing Seb and Boy, who were the backbone of that team alongside Poachers, I just feel it's not going to be the same team that everybody loved, during First Strike, at least because they had tactical ability, but are also really good individually. You lose Android, you lose a brain of Poach. It just doesn't feel like the same squad that people started to fall in love with way back when. Yeah,
it's been a minute. It's been a bit of a change there. We'll head on over to another topic. This is the next one. This is a whole drop. Everybody's leaving. The theme of this episode is just departures. Noble dropped their whole team, which is weird because they had a really good result right before they made this drop, right? But then I guess Levi is headed over towards TSM, is the rumor. So maybe Noble's just taking the buyout on that one and running. Like, what do we think's going on here, Twiggy?
I find it very hard to believe that it's a drop or that even that it's mutual. It does not make sense for me for an org competing at tier 2 so consistently like Noble to let go of the team that beat TSM in one of the hardest routes to main event that there was in NA. I think it does make sense that the players would want to look for like better opportunities and better representation at this point. So I do feel like it might have been a mutual decision between the players that they then brought up to the management. Were like, hey, we might look for something else, unless I don't know, but speculation. But like I do feel like this is mostly driven by the players.
If they had an out from their contracts that they signed like 2 months ago, 3 months ago, something like that, those are the shittiest org contracts I've ever seen in esports. Usually it's the other way around, where it's like, yeah, we'll pay you $50 a month, and also we own your rights for 10 years. Don't read the fine print. That would be surprising to me if it was player led, especially considering they are losing Leviathan, so that's one of their most marketable players in terms of potential appeal in competition. I don't know. That's an interesting thought, though. I would be surprised. I guess my main confusion here is just the fact that, again, this team was signed like a few months ago, maybe. I'm not sure the exact date, but it has not been that long. So whatever their roadmap was, where they're like, yeah, we're just going to cut the team. Who's doing your long-term planning here? I don't know. What do you make of it, Ryan?
So I feel like a lot of it is just the time, because it's like last-ditch opportunity for teams to get further. Like, basically, I think pretty much if you're a team like Noble and you don't qualify to like the ENA finals, which was enough of a feat, there's no more VCT after stage 3 challenges 2. There's none. Because you got last chance qualifiers and all that stuff, sure. And obviously Masters 3 with Berlin. So really all you've got to play for is, I mean, the only thing that we're playing in was the Nerd Street tournaments for the Summer Championship, which they did qualify for. They got plenty of points on the board, and they would be at that event. So maybe I guess the organization thought, well, we're not going to get any points on the board. We're not going to surprise. We're not really there for a shoe-in for last chance qualifiers. We might as well cut our losses because it's so expensive to stay in here. So maybe, yeah, the selling of Leviathan might have been a good reason to, all right, we're not really seeking to rebuild after this, so we'll sell the player. Like, maybe we're going to hold on to stage 3, see out the season, and then finish up. But because we got the offer for Leviathan, we don't want to necessarily replace him. We don't want to get another player on the wage list. So we're just going to stop there. That makes the most sense for me, I think.
It's such a weird short-term one. I really do almost feel like it was like an accounting decision where they're like, well, we got X for buyout, and that covers our costs for having had this roster plus some profit. Cut and run! Stonks! Sell the stonks! It's just a weird one. I don't understand picking up a team with like a 3-month window in mind. It's a very short-sighted maneuver for an org, especially in an ascendant esport like Valorant. Very odd decision. And there's not like another obvious roster for them to pick up, so it's it's an out of Valorant type of move. Just a weird one. We'll move on here. Now we got some signings. This is a positive note. Players on rosters, starting with Superman officially confirmed on Rise. He'd already been competing as part of them as a trial. They did really well. He seemed to mesh really well. All the players were clearly very happy to have him. So this is another one of the Dignitas boys who now finds a home here on Rise. How do we feel about that, Twiggy?
Yeah, from what I can tell, it's a positive move. Rise are like really on the like the precipice of being like a really top team, you know. And it's like at this point, it's really just small changes that are going to make the difference for them to like beat the top teams, I think. So this is a good start, I think. See how it works, and then if they need something more, I feel like they can probably just bring in one more player, and it'll probably be close to that point where they can just work on strats to try and beat those top teams.
This is, again, a fairly young team. I mean, you've got a guy like Neptune who's been competing forever, but is still, like, I don't know, maybe 19 at this point. I'm not even sure how old Neptune is.
I think Derek's super young as well.
So you get someone like Superman who's been around the block before, who's competed in a lot of different titles, who's got a ton of competitive experience in that regard. Yeah, I think that's a pretty good pickup here. How do you feel about it, Ryan?
Yeah, I really like it. I think he played amazingly well against Cloud9. Like, it's nice to see people still being able to have massive impact with Astra. I think she was hilariously underrated in Europe. And I think the teams that did play had a huge advantage in some maps, in some cases. It feels good to be... it's a tricky one, because when Rise were doing well, it was easy to overlook them and go, I don't want to know anything about this team because of the allegations of some of the players on this team. But I think with players like Mav, who also has said allegations moving to Envy, it makes me think that, like, okay, maybe there's stuff that we don't know that they do, that they can get confirmation that these players are legit. You know, we've had a lot of accusations about players in the past. People are this way back when. And it turned out not to be all that much or anything at all. So it feels good to see Rise do that well. It's always a bit of a murky area because it's like, I like how the team plays, but I don't know if I necessarily want to support them when that kind of thing seems to overshadow them so much. But I think Supper as a player was really good on Dignitas, and he's coming strong for this Rise team, who now seem to have leveled up again when they were doing so well in the Nerd Street tournaments, the monthlies, the weeklies, everything. They were doing solid, and now they're doing well and going to be in Challenges 2 for NA as well.
Now, here's going to be my other monthly plea. Please, ECIS, just release the damn report so we can know or not know and move on with our lives. Just closure. Please, closure. God, just give us some closure. Headed on over. Quinn is officially signed to Ghost. This is another signing coming through. This one's interesting to me. Because, again, I think he's he's an experienced player. He's a very level-headed guy. He's a good dude for a roster. It hasn't necessarily had the individual play power, shall we say, that you would ideally hope for from a signing. I think Danny's a really good dude, but he was clearly removed from Gen G because of his inconsistency in terms of the output and fragging. And we've already seen it someone in his games with Ghost, I think, as well. So I'm a little hesitant, I guess, on this signing. What do you make of it, Ryan?
I think it's a good move. I'll keep it short because I think when you have a player like Nismo on the roster, who was a very good raise, I haven't really watched him closely in a while, but I remember him doing exceptionally well in some of the earlier VCT stages. I think that you can play the more passive jet opping, which is what Win does. And when you have players like Ryan on the roster as well, who has been playing a lot more of the KO recently and has been looking pretty good on it, I do feel like you see a different side of Win. And from what I'm seeing from a couple of the games yesterday, he's been playing more Silver and Sky anyway, so he's not been on the Jet. He's flexed up his hero pool, which can only be a good thing, because he's a great player. He's well veteraned and been in the scene a long time. But yeah, you're right. The top echelon of Jet players in NA, he's not quite with it anymore. So the fact that he's improvised and adapted how he plays is only a good thing.
What do you make of it, Swiggy?
Yeah, no, I mean, like he's got a great track record, hasn't he? He's really got tenure in the Valorant scene already. You know, the Gen G squad in Stage 1 Masters, and then like I mean, the start we've seen, he like they lost to YFP, right? In that, and I mean, like I think once he's more integrated and they've tested out more that the Sova Sky kind of thing is playing. I think it's probably going to be a positive move. I'm really excited to see how they play next qualies, because I think it will surprise some people how well they do here.
I'd like to be. I would very much like this to be a good move. I'm just, I'll hold my reservations here. I'll hold my reservations, give them a little bit more time together. Again, from everything that I've ever heard and met, he's a super good dude. So it would be very nice to see that work out. Headed into the rumor department, we're gonna get back to Europe here. Maybe make Twiggy a little more comfortable. We've been asking you a lot of NA questions, man. Come on the show, just ask you a bunch of NA roster moves. Here's a rumor we got coming through. David P and Ambi are apparently trialing with Giants, according to a tweet by Halo. So they're going to be playing challengers too with Giants. What do we make of that, Twiggy?
Well, okay, so David P just has like the list of like first to fourth, first to whatever. Like he's got some massive like wins under his belt, and I think just generally this is a really kind of positive move for Giants. They've been kind of like knocking their head against the wall for a while now, and it's just like they've been like just third in that kind of in the LVP area, and I think like this is going to take them from probably podium to being like one of the top teams up there, because I think this is like something they really needed at this point.
That's interesting. Do you think they're going to be a top team here? Do you think this puts them in contention to be towards the top here, Ryan?
It's hard. I don't really know that much about Ambi, to be honest. David P is a solid player. I do think his attitude's obviously the thing that seems to really add a negative streak through him. I didn't rate the Giants team that badly, to be honest. I thought there was potential there. It seems that Malsey's going to be one of the players leaving who was he's a consistent player, but he's not the kind of person that's really going to bring in the wins off his own back, so to speak. I do think there's the makings of a good Giants team. We've spoken about it quite a lot, pretty much since it was formed. So I think there's potential there, and it would be nice to see David P actually stay on the roster, kind of learn maybe from some of the previous mistakes, and actually have a good run with a massive organization that's only underperformed in VCT so far.
It would be nice to see. There's also, of course, the caveat on Giants that their first match of the next VCT run, they're going to forfeit a map immediately, which is it's such a weird punishment. It's just such a weird punishment, right? Like so you just give the other team, like the other team just gets an advantage. It's an odd punishment. I will say that. But we're going to move on there as opposed to getting into the weeds of very strange discipline being levied. The next rumor we've got, back to North America. Sorry there, Twiggy. Twifo is rumored to Anbox. We've already talked about Anbox a little bit. Twifo is a guy we've talked about a lot since he was removed in terms of being a very talented player coming from XSET. We were all a little bit surprised by the move, but obviously with how well XSET has been doing, it's been pretty justified in terms of they've just built a pretty solid team. But he's a very exciting player to come into Anbox and might just give them a little bit more versatility, shall we say, since he's a player we know can do that before. We know he's a player who's called before. I think that could be interesting here. Ryan, what do you make of it?
Yeah, good backbone. He was always a pretty solid Sentinel player. Probably certainly going through some of the games from previous stages, was a consistently low performer in a lot of the games. And you look at how well XSET's doing at the moment, and I don't think they've really missed him, which is a sad thing to say. But I do think that his playstyle and the way that he's able to sneak around the map and find those duels, very, very similar to a Proto for LG, right? Just the kind of Cypher player, now that Cypher's gone back up in popularity, which only helps him out more because he was playing a lot of Killjoy and Sage, I think, when Cypher wasn't very good. He is the kind of Cypher that will run around the map and find you a kill, find you an opening. And I think in this kind of economy with this kind of meta, that could really suit Ambox because they have very gifted, talented individuals, but having a proactive Sentinel player on your team would help out Ambox a lot. Just get the ball rolling for some of the hits.
Get that effective lurk going. How do you feel about it, Twiggy?
Right, yeah, Ambox have they've kind of just been running their heads into a wall for about a year now, haven't they? They've not quite made it as far as they want to every time, and it's just they really needed to make some kind of positive, like different change, because they're one of the teams that have had like one of the more stable rosters at that point. And I think if you're not quite making it, and it was just even worse this stage than it has been before, you do need to change something, like not drastically, but something like Ryan said about picking up that sentinel that can walk around the map and find you those opening picks is really important, and getting something different going with at least some of the way you play games, it should be really important for Mbox. So I think it's a good move.
All right. Well, we got one more thing over here on our Run It Back section where we talk about the things from the last week. This is the Galorant scandal. This was an interesting bit of discipline levied by Riot. A team called Team Besties was sanctioned for account sharing. Basically, they had a player go from being like -39 through the first 5 maps to being +48 through the next 2 or 3 or something like that. And they noticed that their ping just changed, like very stable ping shifted. They realized that they had somebody else logging in as playing as one of their players. Now, this is an interesting disciplinary number. They've just been banned for 6 months, 18 months, sorry. 1 year for ringing an additional 6 months for not cooperating with the investigation. So they've been banned 18 months. But here's the thing, folks. They still didn't qualify even while cheating, so who cares? These are nobodies, exactly. And now they can go be nobodies and cheat in another game because they're banned. Get them out of here. Get them gone. Anyone else got any hot takes before we slide on off this topic?
Yeah, what can you even say? It's just a team that I mean, were tier 2 in the scene, didn't make it, even with the cheating, and I think that is just poetic justice. So good job, every other team that managed to keep them away from the main event.
The whole thing felt like a burn as well, just the way that Riot wrote it. So it reminds me of when a player retired before and then Riot came out and said, actually, you were banned for cheating. That was a while ago now. I can't remember who it was, but yeah,
it was like last
it's that
summer.
kind of thing.
Yep. Yeah. That was hilarious. That was the one team. Oh God, what was the team called? But yeah, they all suddenly started retiring, and it's like, no, you cheated. You cheated. We caught you. Get out of here. All right, into the VCT Stage 3 Challengers 1 results. We're going to talk about NA first of all, because it was on this channel. So just a little Nerd Street bias coming on here. Did the pre-show this weekend, but we'll go through it quick so we can get into this for our EU caster boys. Sentinels win it.
Real quick, there's a plus for watching it on this channel and not Valorant. I think this one's a bit quicker. It's a bit faster forward. So if you want to get up to date with the game as it's happening, the Nerd Street channel's the best one. Sorry,
the chat in here is always better.
Wow.
This one genuinely has the better chat I've always found. Way more fun to be in here. So yeah, get in here to watch your VCT games. Screw the main Valorant channel. Please don't be mad at me, Rito.
But like 3 seconds ahead. It's great.
Sentinels win it 3-1 over XSET in the grand final. XSET make it that deep, which is awesome. But Sentinels are the returning champions. Obviously, they're the world champions. They win everything. They're continuing to win everything. They do make a lower bracket run, which just saying I called that in the pre-show. But they do the classic Sentinels thing and then just absolutely demolish people once they do make it through. Sentinels still just god tier team. Any signs of cracks in their facade here, Ryan?
Not really. It's just the typical lower bracket run that they seem to go on. I mean, they dropped a map, and XSET, this team looks like to be more of a force to be reckoned with. But I wouldn't necessarily say that this Sentinels team is lacking behind. People are starting to catch them up, but I do think that the other two teams with NV 100 Thieves qualifying, I think the 3 other teams that aren't Sentinels, they're still going for an adjustment period, maybe a honeymoon period as well to qualify. 100 Thieves still trying to work out, obviously, how to implement Ethan as best to the roster, and also Asna changing up his agent pool a lot. There's a lot going for them, but I think Sentinels are still easily the top team in America.
That speaking of Asuna, that Asuna difference, he's nuts. So many highlight reels coming out of Asuna this tournament. So many moments just propelling them to victories that they otherwise looked to be struggling in. I don't know. It's pretty wild. We've got some highlights here. We'll just be playing, but some pretty nuts clips coming out from the competition this weekend here, Twiggy.
Yeah, so much. Like, I was really excited seeing XSET take a series against Sentinels. It's been quite a while since we've seen the Titan bleed, right? I always root for the underdog. I think that's a problem I have at this point, and it's like I think it's starting to cause a little bit of a stir in the NA scene now, because it's like, you know, there are some teams that are getting up there and starting to catch up to Sentinels a little bit, and they need to like kind of think, oh, we can't get complacent anymore, and it's, you know, 100 Thieves have looked super scary. Envy didn't do anything like particularly amazing, but they looked consistent, and they, you know, it just speaks to how much quality they have, and it was just a nice thing to see all of these teams starting to really like challenge Sentinels' authority over the NA scene.
Felt like such a classic Envy run as well. Like qualify to the next level and then just kind of be done with it. Yeah. It's always the Envy thing. Is like they're always going to get to that top 4. They're always going to get to that next event. It's like that tipping over the top into the top 2 or into the final that always seems to give them trouble. But it's nice to know that they're consistent even with the roster change. One team I want to call attention to, and we've got some stats to look at here. There's a tweet that Mitch Reams, who does the esports podcast and a lot of the article writing here, actually drew my attention to, that has statistics of things like ACS, KD. But there's an interesting outlier if we look at these stats, and it's the third man on that list, right? We've got Tens, we've got Asuna, duelists, like crazy young fragger, like Pure, Sean, Victor. We've got the head clickers from every team. And then we've got Odorous here from the Kansas City Pioneers coming in third on the list. The man is calling. The man is not playing duelists. The man is organizing the whole team, and he is popping off. This is quite the outlier, and I think it's really cool to see for Odorous here. What do you make of it, Twiggy?
It's always lovely to see like a player that you don't think of as just like, you got your Tens, you got your Asuna, you got like CNED in Europe and stuff like that. It's nice to see somebody like punching well above, like not necessarily their weight, obviously, but well above their team's kind of means and getting up towards that top part there. Because it's nice to kind of root for somebody that you haven't really seen them much before, and then suddenly you've got this person who's just absolutely looking great out there. And it was really cool to see Kansas City really trying to take maps against Sentinels. It didn't quite happen, but it was close in some cases, and like it's always good. I think everybody loves to root for an underdog a little bit.
I also think the Kansas City Pioneers had a pretty incredible run through this tournament, considering the fact that they didn't actually go very deep. But you got the match against Sentinels. You've got a win over version 1. I mean, these are good players and good teams that they ran up against. How did you feel about that run there, Ryan?
I mean, I don't really see this as a team that has no chance of qualifying at this point. I think they have a lot of stuff going for them. Seeing Odorous mature, I suppose, not just being the jet player for Dignitas who had sort of middling results, to now being able to play Killjoy and Viper. Viper being a very difficult agent to get your head around, but having the impact to be that kind of person. Like, he's starting to look like a shining Sentinel player for anybody that might need that kind of thing, because he's clearly very good on the agents and really sets the pace in the play up against teams like version 1 that they beat. But also, you can stick him on a duelist. He's incredibly flexible. But right now, he's made that whole role his own. And I think this Pioneers team is better than just there was a team in Stage 2 that was CE calling, I think, in Europe. And it's kind of like there's some teams that just get there and you're kind of like, oh, maybe they had an easier bracket. Maybe they just played well on the day and did well. I don't think this Pioneers team is like a kooky koalas or like back then where it's like, oh, how did they manage to get in? This Pioneers team looks good, and with Fraud as well as the coach, they could qualify. I think they could qualify for NA depending on how other teams go into like Challengers too, because a lot of them look really shaky.
I am very excited. And the thing is, they only lost to teams who qualified for this event, right? They lost to Envy, they lost to Sentinels. Those are two of the toughest teams you can draw in this kind of a bracket. And they played the games close. They played good games against them. It wasn't a blowout type of situation. I think the Sentinels one was a little bit more of a blowout. But, it happens. I will say, as someone who's known Odorous for a long time, known Chad for a long time, very happy to see him converting the talent over to and getting a proper shot, because that Dignitas team, by the time he joined, then they dropped the team, and it was just it's good to see him getting a go here, and especially taking up the reins of the calling. I do love to see that from Odorous, a guy who's always had oodles of talent and ability, to see that applied a bit more. One maybe concerning thing, version 1 had a really rough go in this bracket. Obviously, there's the big old asterisk there of they didn't have Zelsis. They were playing with Thief. Zelsis was one of their biggest performers in their last go-around at VCT. I don't think this is cause for panic just yet. I'm just going to shuffle us on in it. But it's something to keep an eye on. They'll be able to have Zelsis for Stage 2. His suspension for whatever the hell that was will be done. He'll be back in the roster. They'll have their 5. We'll see version 1 proper. There will obviously be no excuses, but also they should have an opportunity to show up. Let's hop over to EU, because as always, we're running long on time, and I want to give you guys a chance to talk about the event you cast. EU Valorant, VCT Stage 3, Challengers 1, Ascend, win it. CNED is Nuts. Talk to me about this Ascend team here, Twiggy.
I mean, they had looked terrifying. I think even before qualifiers started, I think there was always this thought Ascend looks scary. I think everybody had them relatively high up on their lists. I don't think everybody had them to win the whole thing, but like they've looked great. And I think what's so exciting about their lineup is not just that CNED is insane, because he is, but it's the fact that you can have so much quality and still have a player shine through like that. That's like Kenny S levels of like household name factor at that point. You know, you're reaching that area where your whole team is amazing and you're shining through as well. And it's nice to have, like, you have it in every region, the player that, like, you know, you see clips and you're like, that's the, you know, not poster child of the region or even of the team. It's just like, this is like I can be like this guy, you know. I just love that kind of factor that you look at a play from him and you're like, that's so cool. I love him.
Just the alpha gameplay. The alpha that everyone else is chasing in terms of damage put out. I don't know. What did you make of this run here, Ryan? How you feel about this Ascend team?
I feel really confident with them. I think as well it's easy to be like CNED is cracked, but remember how much like Team Liquid struggled to set up Scream a lot of the time. A lot of the focus when Eccles was on the roster was flashing in and caddying Scream around to use him as a projectile almost. I think this Ascend team do it so seamlessly people don't notice it, because the setup is there. The backbone of this squad is so good that it allows CNED to just go for audacious and frankly disgusting plays. But he's only able to do that because his team backs him up. So even if he does fail, the trade's there. I think that Bone Cold's done really well, considering he wasn't an IGL, had to fill the boots of Coldamenta, and Stazo had the tournament of his life. But obviously, you know, CNED Go Kill is the way that people see this roster, but I don't think that's true. I think it's much deeper than that, and yeah, they are the scariest team going into EMEA for sure.
It's always good when like you're all right. Put it this way, it's like a fantasy character got a giant sword for the outset, but then if that sword doesn't work out, there's like 20 different blades hidden all over the place. You got spells, you got all sorts of things that can come out here. It is important to have that big gun in CNED, but you're absolutely right in that they've got more flexibility. Now, another roster I want to talk about is a roster that we've speculated about in many iterations a lot over the last year, which is G2. Is this finally like a G2 super team? They've qualified through. They came second in this tournament. They were in the grand final, obviously. Like, is this the G2 project realized? Is this delivering per expectations here, Ryan?
Yeah, it's been an interesting tournament so far, I'd say. Like, just, I think some teams overall, looking at it, I mean, it's tricky because, like, for example, one of the things I said before this stage happened is I don't think Fnatic or Liquid are not only favorites to qualify for Berlin, I feel that they're not going to qualify for Berlin. Now, obviously, that's a bit more like hyperbole, just because of, like, that means that Team Liquid and Fnatic aren't going to get this far. And it's not so much that they suck now and that's why they lost. I think Fnatic have a lot to deal with. I've seen the adjustment with how they play around Durka. It's like, they have a lot to keep track of, and they're also trying to change up the way that they play in real time. They will change their composition after every series just because they're trying stuff out. But Team Liquid, they just do not look as comfortable, and I think G2 have improved a dramatic amount. And I also think the format kind of screws Team Liquid and Fnatic a little bit here as well, because you have a bit more consistency. If FPX, right, they lose to Ascend, they lose to Guild, whatever it was in the close qualifiers, there's still a way back in for them. You get that consistency, which I think has screwed over teams like BDS, which got to events and looked so good because they were consistent. But obviously, putting them against like Liquid, putting them against Guild, they don't really match up, even though it was a best of 3 with Guild. It just allows a lot more consistent results. So I think while NA was a bit more upset city and there was a lot of upsets on the screen here, I still feel like this is what it should be. And frankly, if we had double elimination from the get-go, we might not have had Team Liquid. Well, to be fair, that's kind of ass because we had GSL in stage 2. But a lot of the previous results and how we perceive certain teams, is dramatically different now because we actually have a consistent format that shows that, if that makes sense.
Yeah, so boiling down your point a little bit, you think that these 4 teams actually do represent the consistent level best of the region in a way that maybe previous tournaments didn't properly reflect. Do you find yourself agreeing with that point there, Twiggy?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's like this whole thing that there are so many teams that nobody, like a casual viewer, wouldn't have seen coming into Reykjavik because they didn't make it all the way through because it's single elimination at this point, and one mistake can drop your full team all the way out. That's it. Like the casual scene does not see you over at Masters, and that's it. Like the NA people won't have seen those teams, and I think absolutely, Ascend are one of these really consistent teams that will just do really well all the time. Even if they drop down, they'll come back up. G2, I mean, we saw them drop to FPX at the upper quarterfinals, and they made their way all the way back up. They're a consistent team. They did that well. They have Mixwell to really push them through. I don't think they're a super team. I think they are definitely one of the best in the region, for sure. I don't think they're quite at that level yet, but it is what it is, right? And Fnatic and Liquid, we thought of them as the 2 best teams in the region, but honestly, there was already that kind of people were really biting at their ankles before Reykjavik, but we didn't really see them. And now you're seeing this kind of everybody's vying for this top spot in EMEA. And now, this is catching up to them because they kind of suffered from success because I think they knew that there were people that close to them, and now everyone has a target to aim for. These are the people that made it to Reykjavik. These are the people that we can take them down. We can go to Berlin. And it's difficult to be in that situation for them, especially when you know better than most fans that the teams that are nipping at your ankles are actually good enough to beat you.
Yeah, certainly.
I think a good example of that real quick is like Vitality beat Ascend in Stage 2 to knock them out. If that was a double elim, and the first time they lost to NIP, who's also a very good team. There's a lot of teams like that. But if you have double elimination, do I think that Ascend would have made it to qualify? Probably, in all honesty. Because you've got BDS and Liquid on the other side of the bracket, which I think Ascend could have beaten. Even though Ascend are looking a lot better now, they did look worse back then. I still think that they were good enough to qualify for EMEA. So that's kind of a firm example of what I mean. And I think that we're going to have much better teams and representation in Berlin this time to actually compete against Sentinels than we ever have in the past, because just the format alone it's amazing how much it's done for the scene.
So what you're saying is you might just get not completely stuffed by the second best NA team with the stand-in, right?
I think in the form that they're in at the moment, Ascend would win, but I've probably jinxed them. I think they'd be Sentinels, like handedly. But let's see.
I actually agree. It might be
utopian. It's in 2 months' time, so a lot can change. But if it was happening now, I think that...
Don't qualify. Don't water this down. Say your statement. Say it with your chest. Say it bold. Ryan here thinks that Ascend will beat the Sentinels. That's what he's saying.
Handedly.
That's what he's saying. Clip it. Ship it. We'll see if he's right. We'll see if he's right.
Yeah, NBS and Own Cold are now just being like... God damn it, man, you've jinxed us so hard. And FPX are like, we can finally do well because the expectations are off us. But this Ascend team, I think, actually beat Sentinels in scrims, but when Sentinels were over for Reykjavik, but that's another matter. But
right.
I think it was like
They did say that, didn't they? Sentinels were saying EU were a really scary region, and then it didn't really happen. And I was like, okay, were they talking about other teams then? I think Ascend might have,
We'll have to see. We'll have to see if they can in fact make it to Berlin. This would be really interesting. Ooh.
I think the main point is that Ascend are the real deal. Like, they're not just some flavor of the month kind of thing. They've always been a top team, and the way that it's been put together, it's not a big brand, is it, right? Ascend didn't exist a couple of months ago. They obviously had to make up a new org because of the Raise Your Edge stuff, but like, it helps. Ascend is now going to be a household name, I think, in Valorant, and they're looking really good going into EMEA. But the problem is EMEA is a month away now, and they have to keep fresh.
They do. I think that the building blocks that are there won't be too difficult to continue to adapt and build upon. I do think that what you've talked about of, like, this team has consistency. This team has the roots in the skeleton, where it's not just, one player needs to be hot kind of thing. It'll be interesting to see how they do a month from now when those playoffs or when those come through. But moving on here, because we are running out of time, as is our wont. I did want to pull these up because they're hilarious. we got some power rankings. These were power rankings that went on the official VCT Twitter. They were memed upon by everybody. They deleted the tweet. Fortunately, our producer Cody went back and found a cached image from Reddit from before the tweet was deleted and pulled it up for us because I thought we weren't going to be able to talk about these. Now, the caveat here is that the theory is that someone didn't understand how a power rankings list works and thought that this was just supposed to be a general indicator of like which teams improved their ranking in the world kind of thing. But if this is meant to be a list of ordered list, this shit is trash, yo. I mean, this is the stupidest ranking list I've ever seen, and it makes no sense and has no context, Ryan.
What does it mean?
What does any of it mean? The question.
It's not even in alphabetical order. It's not in any order. I don't like if it's like Supermassive Blaze have had the biggest change. That makes sense. Why you put Sentinels at the bottom? They've gone up a bit because the expectations were up pretty high, but they've won again. Gambit should be way at the top. They didn't drop a map, I don't think. Like, I don't know who did this. I feel like.
And then, in that case, why aren't you putting the teams that dropped down below the teams that did a small jump up? I don't. It's
yeah. Why is Fnatic? But Sentinels is at the bottom. Fnatic is near the top. Like Fnatic didn't qualify. What are you doing?
I know it's like they've gone down a little bit. Yeah, it's just like fucking Christ. But it's like I don't want to hear if I'm on a desk that's a bad take, Ryan. When Riot did this, like Anna Donlan wrote this herself, like was just maybe. It wasn't. I'm not going to put this on Anna. That's not fair.
Well, here's the thing that I think is really funny is it's not like this was just a tweet, right, where someone wrote it out. Because then like one social media manager could have just made a dumb thing and like put it out there. This is a graphic. Like someone had to spend time making this. They probably had to get it approved. I would guess more than one set of eyes looked at this and went, yeah, that's a good idea. And then they put it out there into the world. And immediately the whole internet was like, the fuck are you doing? And why?
I made a joke in like the production Discord that this was made purely for impressions, purely to get people replying and spreading it all over. They said that's not true, but hey,
they deleted it so they don't want those impressions.
It does work.
It does feel like that. You just make the worst take and get it spread everywhere as a result. It's just very silly.
The funniest part is just that people like we're still not as bad as the spikes, and it's like damn, like, they have actual scientists working on an algorithm to work it out, and even this is kind of like Babby's first power rankings.
Graphic design is my passion.
You buy this in Toys R Us if it was still open, and like it's still it's still better than Spike trying. Like, and that's not even like down to Minak or anything like that. That's just people be like, wow, that's a rough one. I personally don't mind them, but this is just it gives me more. I could get a bachelor's degree in data management and still not understand what the context of this is meant to be.
Yeah, someone should write a piece trying to figure out what their system was. Why? Just why?
You know, when people like when you go to the gym and stuff, when you like have to, get angry, like if you're, I'm just gonna think of this because this literally, I have been docile all day, and now I'm like, I don't need any energy drinks or anything like that. I don't get it. I don't get it.
It's just baffling. There's certain things that humankind was just not meant to understand, and this graphic was one of them. Heading into our next topic here, the NSG Summer Champs Open 11 happened, so we're just going to take a peek at that bracket. EZ5 and YFP were in the finals, which those are two unsigned teams, and there were a lot of org teams in this tournament. To give you some context there, YFP's run involved beating Recon 5 in the first round, whatever. Squirrel Squad in the second, whatever. Ghost Gaming in the third. And then they dropped to EZ5 in the finals. And then on the other side of the bracket, first of all, Team Basilisk on that side of the bracket lost in the first round to a team called Fenrir, so that's not a great sign. But also on the other side of the bracket, EZ5 beat NRG in the second round and the Pittsburgh Knights in the third. And the Knights had just beat Evil Geniuses. So this is two unsigned teams in EZ5 and YFP who are continuing to have really dang good results. EZ5 in particular have been on fire lately and have been taking a lot of different org names in these sort of second tier events. Players like you'll recognize players from back in the China Wen days of like Pancakes, that was that roster, right? Pancakes, Decop, they were both on that team. I'm not crazy, am I?
Wasn't Decop on Beast Coast?
He was on Beast Coast in a while, but I thought he was. Maybe I'm mixing up who's on what roster at this point. But they've also got Calm, Kempeki, and Guck 107. But this team has been doing really well. I think that's pretty cool. I think this is kind of the next heater team when you looked at a team like, well, I want to say the Kooky Koalas, but they're now Dark Zero and they lost in the first round, so that's not exactly a great aspirational thing. I think this is the next team that's sort of on a heater, and I think that they're sustaining it in these open tournaments for a while now, and I'm really excited to see them compete at Summer Champs as well. What do you make of this, Twiggy?
Yeah, I've had my eye on EC5 like vaguely from, I think it was like March or something like that. I did an event, like a lower tier 2 event with them where I think they got to the finals and lost to Noble, I think it was. And I think at that point, I can't remember if EC5 had Leviathan at that point. I don't know. Anyway, they were looking great then, and like it just looked like a team with potential, and now, you know, they're really showing it. And I vaguely knew about YFP from some Twitter posts I saw, and I just looked at a couple of VODs of theirs. But I mean, like, both of these teams are looking like really like top of tier 2. They could probably, like, I want to see them like do something big in the next qualifiers if I'm honest.
Yeah, how do you feel about this bracket here, Ryan?
What's going on with NRG?
Yeah,
that's a rough one. The last map as well was on stream, and they just got 13-4 is what they lost. It's been cool to watch because there's a lot of KO on show, but I wouldn't necessarily say that KO's been a differentiating factor for some of these teams. In fact, I think it's been a very lukewarm pick for a lot of teams. But it's also hard to gauge because, like DUI, you can't see who's suppressed unless you're watching the KO's perspective, which I think is a nightmare for an observing perspective to know who actually can use abilities and who can't. So hopefully that's something that Riot add in as soon as possible, certainly before the playoffs. But yeah, that, other than the Evil Geniuses, again, a team that has obviously got a lot of flack recently. It's really a back-breaking time for a lot of these teams, because most of which have qualified and done relatively well for the Summer Showdown, but like there's a lot of teams that are quickly building up a bit of a bad rep for just not being good at the moment.
It is always the interesting trade-off, right? Where we've had a lot of people talking about, if you're not placing well in VCTs, you need to be playing these open tournaments. You need to be playing these open tournaments, and that's fantastic to see.
If you can, yeah.
The more of these that you're allowed to play, the more you should play to continue to compete here. But the flip side is, if you're an NRG and you're consistently losing to EZ5, if you're going out in the second round of these tournaments, that is really not a good look for your roster. It's really not a good look considering the salaries your players are probably drawing. That's obviously a big assumption here, but I'm just going to go ahead and guess. Like, it's just not encouraging here, and it does open you up to a significant amount of ridicule there. So some more time in the server needed, some more time in scrimming needed to figure this on out. And also, I will say, to your point, Ryan, clearly they struggled to integrate KO as well. You'll note that obviously kills aren't everything here, but they were putting very talented players on the KO, and the KO was immediately sinking them towards the bottom of the board. We saw Tex playing KO, we saw Sam playing KO. They're adapting to that agent, clearly. That I think is going to take a little bit of a learning curve, and it doesn't seem like NRG has been super quick to find that new form, if you will. And it's going to wrap up our show here, folks. One thing to note before we do wrap up, there is something you all need to check out. There's a podcast out, part of the Esports Meta podcast here for the Nerd Street Gamers. It's a long-form interview with Tens. I know it's been getting a lot of views, and a lot of people have been seeing it, but if you haven't seen it yet, it is out right now, so go ahead and check that out. I also have some inside scoops on what some of the next topics are going to be, and I will tell you that one of the next topics that's coming soon is about the Kansas City Pioneers, so be sure to keep an eye out for that one. Since we obviously talked about that org, it's very exciting. We're talking about a little more about the org structure. The CEO, I think, sat down for a long-form interview. So that one's coming either this Friday or next Friday. I honestly don't remember which one it is, but keep an eye out for that. Check out the Esports Meta. It's a really good podcast that Mitch Reams is doing here for Nerd Street. And of course, check out Nerd Street Gamers it's just nerdstreet.com. I keep getting that wrong. I've been with this company doing things for too long. They keep changing it up on me. nerdstreet.com/news for all sorts of good articles about Valorant and other esports as well. Twiggy, I want to thank you so much for coming on. Congratulations on doing some VCT casting as well. It was a pleasure to have you on the show here. Everyone, follow this man if you don't already at Twiggy Casts. And anything you want to shout out here before we wrap up?
Myself. Thank you for having me
Do
on.
it. Do it up, man.
It's been a pleasure. Yeah. Follow my Twitter. I post great takes like Fnatic losing to Guild. That was my big one. Anyway, I think honestly, Guild just looked amazing, so that's why I did that. But yeah, no. Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.
My only advice to you is lean into the negative takes. Just lean in more. Go for it. Have fun with it, my man. Have fun with it. Ryan, you got anything fun going on this week?
Flying to Spain tomorrow for the Red Bull Campus.
Oh, that's
Split
right.
Final, so that's going to be.
I saw that announcement. Congratulations!
I get to hang out with Upmind in person and cast with him, so it should be a good one.
Good luck controlling Gus in Spain. I have no idea what that's going to be like, but have fun with it.
He's so excited. He's never been to Europe before and just wants to go to the Bernabeu. But yeah, he's like a puppy. With a lot of hair.
That I did the pre-show with him this past weekend. The vibe is puppy with a lot of hair, like one of those big sheepdog type of vibes. Like just very excited to see things. Very happy to be there. It'll be a good time. That's awesome as well that you guys got that gig. So check out the Red Bull Campus Clash this coming weekend to watch your boy Ryan there. Is the Hat going to make an appearance?
Probably not. Again, it's like maybe covering the face a little bit, so probably not. But we'll see.
My vote is for the Hat to come on in. But that's going to wrap up our show here.
Mine
Tune
too.
in every week at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time or Eastern Daylight Time or whatever it is. Whatever it is in your time zone, we're here every week. Check out the show on YouTube as well. And we'll see you next time. Goodbye, everybody.